Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be taking a close look at Adama Mickiewicz's Dziady, Part 3.
Dziady.
This play, it really dives into some pretty intense themes, doesn't it? Like rebellion and national identity, and even, well, spiritual turmoil.
Yeah.
Set against this backdrop of Tsarist repression in Lithuania.
You know, what always strikes me about Dziady is how Mickiewicz, writing from exile, still manages to capture the atmosphere of Vilnius in 1823 so perfectly.
It's almost like you're transported back in time.
It is. Imagine the failed November uprising. It's still fresh in everyone's minds.
Right.
Schools are being shut down, suspicion everywhere.
On every student, every intellectual.
Exactly. And to really appreciate the play's power, you have to understand the realities these people were facing under this oppressive regime.
It wasn't a joke.
No, not at all.
So let's start with the students and the teachers in Vilnius.
Good place to start.
Their world was completely upended after the uprising.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about more than just schools closing.
Oh, much more.
The research mentions this decree, declaring students from closed schools civilly dead. That's a chilling phrase.
It is.
What did that even mean for them practically?
Well, it was a brutal form of punishment, very calculated. Civilly dead meant barred from public service.
Oh, wow.
No higher education.
So essentially,
Stripped of their future.
and any potential to contribute to society.
Exactly.
It's hard to even grasp the impact that must have had on young people.
Oh, absolutely. Devastating.
We're just seeking knowledge and a better future.
Of course. And it wasn't just individuals who suffered. We have to remember that.
Right?
Entire institutions were targeted. Think about the Philomachi,
Philomachi.
a student society dedicated to self-improvement and Polish culture.
They became a prime target, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost ironic.
It is, very much so.
A group called Lovers of Learning,
Right?
targeted by a regime terrified of knowledge.
And independent thought.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It does. About the nature of oppression.
Even today.
Absolutely. This wasn't just about closing schools. This
Right.
was about dismantling the very fabric of Polish society.
And that's where Senator Nosilkow enters the picture.
Ah, yes. Now Nosilkow. He was basically the Tsar's enforcer
Sent to Vilnius.
to stamp out any spark of Polish nationalism.
And the research doesn't paint a pretty picture of his methods.
No, it doesn't. Nosilkow, he orchestrated a systematic campaign.
Oh, wow.
Arrests and interrogations targeting anyone suspected of disloyalty.
And particularly students and intellectuals.
Of course. He understood that ideas, education,
Yeah.
those were powerful tools of resistance.
And he wanted to eliminate them.
at the source.
It's a stark reminder of how authoritarian regimes view knowledge and free thought as threats to their power.
Throughout history and even today.
And this atmosphere, this fear and paranoia,
Oh, it's palpable in Dziady.
you can feel it.
Mickiewicz doesn't shy away from depicting the psychological impact of this oppression on his characters. Take Gustav, for example.
Yeah, Gustav.
We first meet him in a prison cell, consumed by despair, disillusionment.
He seems to represent the collective trauma of Polish youth after the failed uprising.
In a way, he does.
His transformation into Konrad, though,
Yes,
that marks a real shift in the play.
it does. It's crucial.
And, that transformation, it's key to understanding the themes of resistance and rebellion that run through the entire work.
It is.
Remember that inscription Gustav carves into the wall of his cell?
Oh, I do. Gustavus obiit. Hic natus est Conradus.
Gustav has died. Here is born Konrad.
Yes, a powerful statement.
Symbolic death and rebirth.
Absolutely.
But what does this new persona, Konrad, represent?
Konrad, he embodies the spirit of defiance,
The defiance.
emerging from the ashes of despair. He's a fiery romantic hero,
Mm.
a passionate poet who sees himself as a potential savior of his nation, his birth, so to speak, inside a prison cell.
Oh, that's symbolic, isn't it?
It is very much so.
What is Mickiewicz trying to say by placing these crucial scenes within a prison?
The prison in Dziady, it's more than just a physical space.
Right.
It represents these broader constraints imposed upon the Polish people by the Russian regime, the suppression of their language.
Their culture, their identity.
Exactly.
So it's a symbol of this suffocating atmosphere of oppression.
Yes,
But it's also the birthplace of Konrad,
it is.
the symbol of rebellion.
A fascinating paradox.
It is, isn't it?
The prison becomes a crucible,
A crucible.
where the pressure of oppression forges a new kind of resistance,
Gustav, broken by the system.
transforms into Konrad,
A defiant spirit.
ready to challenge the very foundations of that system.
And that defiance, It finds its most powerful expression in Konrad's great improvisation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a scene that has captivated readers for centuries.
I can see why.
It's a whirlwind, really, of emotions, of ideas,
Mm.
a torrent of words where Konrad grapples with faith, national identity.
And the power of art. He challenges God, demands answers, and ultimately asserts his own creative power as this force for change.
He does.
It's a complex scene, isn't it?
It is.
It reflects those turbulent emotions of a nation struggling with oppression.
Yeah, it does.
But there's also this glimmer of hope in Konrad's defiance.
Yes.
A refusal to be silenced.
Exactly. And this leads us to another pivotal character,
Okay.
the senator.
The senator.
He represents that cold, bureaucratic face of the Tsarist regime.
A stark contrast to Konrad's passionate rebellion.
Absolutely. And we see this contrast vividly in the salon scene,
It's a long scene.
a gathering of the Polish elite in Warsaw that feels so far removed from that grim reality of the prison.
It does, doesn't it?
That scene, it's a masterclass in social commentary. Mickiewicz uses it to expose the moral bankruptcy of the Polish upper class.
Their complicity in their own oppression.
Yes. They're more concerned with gossip, social status.
Than the fate of their nation.
Exactly.
It's a sobering reminder that oppression can take many forms, and that sometimes the most insidious form comes from within.
It does. It comes from those who should be leading the charge for change.
But instead, they choose to prioritize their own comfort and security.
A theme that, unfortunately, remains all too relevant today.
Makes you wonder where hope even fits into all of this. But it's interesting, because even with all this darkness, Mickiewicz brings in this character, Father Peter.
Right, Father Peter.
Humble monk.
Yes.
But he represents a whole different kind of resistance.
He does. He embodies this idea of spiritual resistance.
Spiritual resistance.
He has this prophetic vision,
Oh, right.
shrouded in symbolism, of course.
Of course.
But it foretells the future of Poland, hints at this possibility of national rebirth.
And that vision, with the number 44, it's sparked a lot of debate, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. Lots of interpretation. Some believe it refers to a future leader.
Like a figure who will guide Poland to freedom.
Exactly. Others see it as representing a year of national rebirth.
What's your take?
It's hard to say for sure, and maybe that's intentional, That ambiguity, it creates a sense of anticipation.
A glimmer of hope.
Exactly. Sustaining the spirit in these times of despair. Whether it's a leader or a year, that number 44, it becomes like a beacon.
A symbol of faith.
In the eventual triumph of good over evil.
That idea of prophecy and messianism, it was pretty common in Romantic literature, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It offered solace, a sense of purpose, in times of turmoil, fueled the belief that even in the darkest times, a brighter future was waiting.
And then we come to the final scene of the play, set in a cemetery. On All Souls Day. What's the significance of that setting, you think, especially with all these themes we've been talking about?
Well, the cemetery on All Souls Day, it's a space just loaded with symbolism. It's
Right.
where the living and the dead commune, memories are honored, and that spirit of resistance is passed down through generations.
So Mickiewicz is suggesting that even in death, the fight continues.
In a way, yes. The cemetery becomes the symbol of resistance itself, a place where the memory of those who fought for freedom, it continues to inspire.
Exactly.
It's a powerful statement about the enduring nature of hope and the importance of remembering those who came before us. They may be gone, but their struggle, their sacrifices, not forgotten. This scene reminds us that the fight for freedom, it goes beyond the boundaries of life and death. The spirits of those who have perished, they continue to inspire the living.
A poignant and hopeful ending to a play that deals with some really dark themes. As we wrap up our deep dive into Dziady Part 3, what are some key takeaways you hope listeners will think about? What was Mickiewicz trying to say about oppression and resistance?
For me, Dziady Part 3, it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. In the face of unimaginable brutality, it shows us the different faces of oppression, from the overt, systematic crushing of institutions and individuals to the subtle, corrosive effects of apathy and complicity.
It also highlights how resistance can take so many forms.
It does. We see it in Konrad's fiery defiance and Father Peter's unwavering faith, and in that quiet but enduring spirit of remembrance in the cemetery scene.
Exactly. Resistance can be artistic, spiritual, even the act of remembering those who came before us.
Absolutely. And woven through it all, this thread of hope, this belief in the power of the human spirit to resist tyranny. and to keep striving for a better future.
A message that still resonates today.
It does. As we look at the world today and we see these ongoing struggles for freedom and justice. Dziady, Part 3. It reminds us that these are not new battles. They are echoes of struggles fought for centuries. They require the same courage, the same resilience, the same belief in a better tomorrow.
It's a call to action, isn't it?
It is. A reminder that we all have a role to play in resisting oppression, whether it's in our own communities or on a global scale. Even small acts of defiance, of remembrance, of speaking truth to power. These all contribute to the larger movement for a more just and equitable world.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive. Thank you for sharing your insights, for helping us unpack this complex and powerful work. We hope our listeners will be inspired to delve deeper into Dziady Part 3 and to think about its relevance in our own time. It really does, doesn't it? Yeah. That connection to the fight for justice, that's what makes Dziady resonate even now. But before we move on, I want to circle back to Father Peter's vision.
Okay.
It seems like a pretty key piece to understanding Mickiewicz's message of hope.
It's crucial, for sure. We're talking about a nation under immense pressure, facing a real threat of cultural annihilation.
Right.
Father Peter's vision, even though it's wrapped up in symbolism and open to interpretation, it acts as this powerful antidote to that despair.
You mentioned that number 44 earlier.
Right.
And how it's caused all this debate.
It has.
Could you talk about that a little more? Why has this one detail become such a focal point?
Well, it's partly because of the ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
Mickiewicz never explicitly states what 44 is supposed to represent.
So is it a person? A year? A coded message?
Exactly. And that open-endedness, it allows readers and audiences to sort of project their own hopes and anxieties onto it.
So it's almost like a mirror.
It is reflecting this collective yearning for liberation.
That's powerful.
And that's what makes it so potent. For those living under oppression, 44 becomes this symbol of faith.
In the future.
In the future. A promise that all their suffering won't be for nothing. It taps into that deep human need to believe that even when things are darkest, there's a dawn coming.
And it speaks to the power of art.
Right.
To offer solace and inspiration. Speaking of powerful imagery, let's talk about that final scene. In the cemetery.
Okay.
It's such a stark shift from the prison cell.
It is.
And the Warsaw Salon.
The contrast is very deliberate. Mickiewicz takes us from those confined spaces, both physical and psychological, to this place of vastness and remembrance.
And the cemetery, especially on All Souls Day.
Yes.
It represents a continuity, doesn't it? A connection to those who have passed.
It does.
But their struggles are still so present.
It's almost like he's suggesting that the fight for freedom, it goes beyond individual lives.
It does.
The cemetery becomes this space where the torch of resistance is passed down.
From one generation to the next.
Exactly. And it all ties into this idea of collective memory as a form of resistance. By remembering and honoring those who fought and suffered, we keep their spirit alive.
And we draw strength from their example.
We do.
So to bring it all back to our initial question, what's Mickiewicz ultimately trying to say about oppression and resistance in Dziady?
I think he shows us that oppression can manifest in so many different ways. Through brute force.
Right.
Through the manipulation of language and education.
Yeah.
And even through the complacency of those who really should be standing up for justice.
And resistance, too, it takes many forms.
It does. We see it in Konrad's fiery rebellion.
Yeah.
We see it in Gustav's descent into despair. We see it in Father Peter's quiet faith. And in that collective act of remembrance in the cemetery.
And woven through all of it.
Hope.
A belief in the power of the human spirit.
To resist tyranny.
To strive for a better future.
And that message feels incredibly relevant right now.
It does, doesn't it? As we look around the world and we see these ongoing struggles for freedom and justice.
Yeah.
Dziady, it reminds us that these battles, they're not new. They're echoes of struggles that have been going on for centuries.
And they demand that same courage, that same resilience, that same belief in a better tomorrow.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
My pleasure.
And for helping us unpack this incredibly complex and powerful work. We hope that our listeners out there will be inspired to explore Dziady Part 3 for themselves.
I hope so too.
And to really consider what it means for us today.